Are you feeling nervous for this weekend's match against Flyquest? Because I promise you, however nervous you're feeling, it's nowhere close to what Steve is probably feeling right now. Because if you tuned in to a single minute of the Doublelift and Pobelter co-stream that happened with Steve on it this past weekend against Shopify of all teams, yeah, no, none of us pale in comparison. My dude was terrified the entire series all the way through. I've never seen somebody that scared during a co-stream since probably myself the week prior when I was wrapped up in a blanket. You know what? Maybe it's more relatable than I'm giving it credit for. Anyways, welcome back, baby.
Something that I gotta do with both
Let's start with that Shopify series, shall we? Which, yes, 3-0, exactly what we needed to see happen going into this weekend. I'd be lying to you if I said that game 2 wasn't a little bit worrisome, but if anything, it's just indicative of exactly who we are at this point, where we will let anybody and everybody get some moments of advantage over us. We probably should have lost game 2, like deadass. I do not understand how Shopify chucked the lead that they did with a comp that felt like it did so well in the situation where they're ahead and just closing in on our base. But I guess, look, the hardest thing to do in League of Legends is win a game. Genuinely, hardest thing to do. You can get leads, you can fall behind. The hardest thing to do is to win a game, without question. It's way easier to lose a game than it is to win a game. But I watched most of this series when in transit from Queens getting back to Jersey City, and I don't really have all that many notes from here because the quality of Shopify as an opponent, as seen in this series, is just drastically lower than what we are going to see this upcoming weekend against Flyquest, who look like the hottest team in the league, barring C9, who's still undefeated at this point. So there's really not much you can take away from this series other than, hey, at least we got the job done against a weaker opponent. Honestly, the bigger storylines to come out of this week actually came from pros, which I don't want to... How do I say this in the nicest and most sensitive way possible? I am very happy that Quid and CoreJJ went on the episode. I listen to podcasts personally at work and just have it on in the background. And unfortunately, by nature of English being second language in this situation, it made the podcast very difficult to listen to at work. So I still haven't had the time to fully sit down and listen to this. I caught more from what Jat recapped in Mind the Gap real quick today than I did in the few minutes that I got to listen there, because I can put Mind the Gap on in the background and just tune out but still pick up on it. When Quid speaks, I love the guy, but you do have to sit there and pay attention to what he's saying and actively listen, which is not something that I can do necessarily at work. So I got to get back to it. But Jat pointed out that one of the conversations that was had during this series spawned from the whole Sentinels conversation around, hey, maybe we're speaking too much Korean in these cons, which I addressed on Monday. But apparently it's actually an issue for TL as well, which I don't know why I didn't think about it or why I didn't put together that this would be a bigger issue for us than I gave it credit for. I guess Quid's just been in North America for long enough that I assumed it wouldn't be as big of a problem. Morgan, obviously, yes, but Core's been here for a bit. I just didn't think communication would be an issue. Yes, obviously getting on the same page as 5 veteran players is a whole different ask and a whole different task, which obviously we are continuing to struggle with. TL in general, we tend to have a roster building philosophy of bringing in a bunch of veterans with less rookies. There was one exception to that being the Yawn and APA year, but immediately after that era was done, what happens? Well, they bring in more veterans, and clearly veterans have styles that clash, that need to be communicated and talked through. But when not everybody is all that fluent in English, or at least not at a good enough level to the point where apparently there are breakdowns in communication during these series where Spawn is saying, hey, if you have to talk Korean, just speak in Korean. Do what you got to do. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh, we're fucked if that's actually going to be a problem going forward. Yawn, for context, does know good Korean, apparently, according to Jat and according to everything going on here. So the only person that would be left out actually from comms, if that happens, is Jose Dioto. But again, we're in North America. The majority of your roster, not every version is going to be able to speak. I'll be honest with you, I just got such a fundamental issue with these rosters that are built in mind to speak nothing but Korean in comms in North America. It's never going to work long term. And the fact that we are dealing with this problem now in 2026, despite the issues of that already rearing their head in 2023 and then in other rosters since, like how many times do we have to repeat this before we call it freaking crazy? It's a worrying sign for this upcoming weekend. The main reason for that being that, again, our biggest issue are these macro calls that are just little by little moments that you need to be able to snap, make a decision. And we need to be decisive. That has been my whole point for the last little bit. And it feels like we are not that. And it is clear that that is because we are not on the same page in terms of how we want to play. We are not on the same page in terms of the communication in the moment, because somebody might not know exactly what to say or the right way to say it. And then everything just kind of breaks down from there. So going into this Flyquest series against a team that is built with rookies, with excitement, but all again with the same language, they're not going to have the same issues that when the pressure gets tight, whenever these moments happen and you're in a game 5 and you need to make a snap decision, we just seem to falter. And Flyquest hasn't, at least not within their recent run. I'm starting to jump the gun a little bit in terms of previewing that series. I want to wait just a little bit because I do want to talk about around the org and follow up on last week, which was the Doublelift signing to Team Liquid as an organization. And we actually got an update via Reddit of, I believe he's the director of content or director of production, Leaf, over on Reddit. He provided some clarity in terms of what you can expect from these signings. And I just want to turn this all over to you and ask you, do you think co-streaming and then occasional one-off videos and then just like the single tournament that they're producing for Doublelift, is that enough in your opinion to warrant the value of signing somebody as a coach? Does that build long-term fandom for you? Because what I got, or at least my sense of it from last week's comment section and on Reddit, is that most people seem to be on the same wavelength as me, where no, that's not enough. Like co-streaming nowadays is like kind of the bare minimum, especially for a creator that size. Like when your full-time job is content and you are then signing to an organization, in theory, you should be doing everything you can to help grow the two in tandem. And if there's really that minimal availability between the two, can you really do enough to cultivate a fan base that will stick around for longer than just that individual person's contract and be able to establish an identity within the fandom, within the org, and the culture that is notably different than everything else that's led up to this point? Otherwise, you're just, like, again, building Doublelift fans that will leave the org if for some reason he were to leave. Now, if he sticks around long term, fine, but like, this to me is just, it's not what I expect nowadays. Pobelter, on the other hand, sounds like he's going to have a bit more time, which would be a great step. But also, like, these guys, if you're going to co-stream, you really should have the VODs up somewhere, whether that's like on the Team Liquid channel or whether that's somebody nearly just threw a football that bounced into the river. That would have been crazy. I'm curious to see how this goes because, once again, it has been 11 days since that announcement, and I know they filmed content on Sunday. But I hate to keep beating a dead horse, so to speak, but like, this is going to be my main gripe. And you can't say that I don't have the right to speak because I'm putting out more content than most other people do on a consistent basis while working a full-time job. So yeah, I believe I've got room to talk here. Again, hoping for the best. Obviously, the Tier 2 idea was a pipe dream in every single world, but we'll see how this goes. For the Flyquest series, oh boy, this is going to be a bit nerve-wracking. Because obviously they were the ones that broke our mental and kind of have dropped us down to the level that we're at now. If you listen to Steve in the co-stream that he had with Doublelift and Pobelter, our scrims have not been going great. We have chucked like 7, 8K gold leads in scrims, which obviously on stage is going to be a little bit different. You slow it down to the point where that shouldn't be as throwable. But clearly we're having issues that we haven't been able to solve. And now, I mean, this is just your biggest test. This past week, Flyquest looked so good. And I know that Sentinels isn't the top team, but if you compare how Flyquest looked against Sentinels versus how we looked against Shopify, it's night and day difference. Now, granted, if Masu doesn't pop off in the way that he did during that series, maybe it's a different conversation. I don't expect him to be able to do that against us. If he does, then, oh God, we didn't learn anything from watching their VODs this past week. But you need to shut him down. He's clearly a facilitator for this squad. The problem with Flyquest is that, like, Masu popped off this week, but Quad's also been having a good year. So is Gakos for the most part. So like there's really not a point within this roster. And this is the top 4 teams now, so you don't really have as many angles to pick on. It quite literally is coming up with a plan and showing up on the day to make sure that whoever they are trying to carry, we shut down, while enabling whoever we, in this particular moment, want to see lead the squad. Quid notably looked a little bit better, so maybe you can argue that he'll be able to step up here against Quad, but I think Jose Dioto's still the strong point. And when you look at Flyquest, like Griffin, we've seen him falter in playoffs before when you set him behind a little bit. And I think Jose Dioto has the potential to do that, but my eyes are going to this bot. Everything's kind of bot lane centered right now, if we're being honest. So my mind just keeps coming back to this Masu versus Yawn matchup. And Masu has, as of recently, proven himself more that when you invest the resources in, the team is able to play around him and carry and like put him in the position to really deal damage. Whereas it feels like we have not been able to unlock Yawn, or at least play around him in the same way. Again, not Yawn's fault in that particular situation, not flashing a Bard ability. Yes, his fault. But in general, the team needs to be united in how they want to play. If I had to put a number on it, it's going to be a 3-2 series. And obviously I'm going to pick us, but like I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that I don't think this is going to be anything but incredibly close. Our drafting definitely improved over the past week. Like you need to make sure that you don't have these picks that are just one-off terrible shots. I don't want to see Jhin come out all week for us. Like I know last week in the Flyquest series it was picked away from Masu, which was a benefit to them. Same thing for us. I don't want to see us pick the Jhin. Look, I know this might not have been like the most cohesive preview of this series, but I think that's just because whenever it comes to the top 4, there's only so much you can say. We have watched all of these teams play, and it's just a matter of showing up on the day. And I think at least from a mental hurdle and a mental perspective, this is a big monkey on our back at the moment. Because they were the ones that broke our mental in the first place, it would go a long way to rebuilding not only that trust within each other, but just like the belief in ourselves if we can correct the wrong that we had earlier. And you just got to show up on the day and be decisive. At least that's my perspective as somebody who's not going to pay attention to scrims, who's only going to pay attention to what happens on the rift there, which I know might be a fool's mission, and the scrims might be able to indicate where this might go and put the piece together. But to me, this is what we see. And I know people are nervous. I know the fans are very much going to be in Flyquest's favor, not ours. And there's nothing we can do to change that. Like, we're pretty much playing away games other than versus Lion from here on out for the rest of the playoffs. You got to be comfortable and ready to tackle that environment. I know I am. I hope you all are too. Now, our series is on Saturday. I will be co-streaming the entire thing here on YouTube. If you haven't done so, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers at the moment. We're getting pretty close, and I'm going to be a nervous wreck come Saturday. But the good thing is I'm going to be more of a nervous wreck, at least temporarily, because the Knicks have the NBA Finals and Love Island is starting right now. So I've got so many things to distract myself, which thank God for, but oh man. You know I'm starting to take things serious when I start like talking a little bit slower and just being like, oh boy, here we go. That's whenever shit gets real. But at least I'm still not as nervous as Steve is. I will keep coming back to that point. My man is terrified. But that's what you want to see in an honor. It's nice.